Welcome back. I'm Aleea.
And I'm Hav.
I'm sure you're like us and you love getting unsolicited advice and judgment from family, friends, strangers. I obviously was saying that because we definitely don't. Once you become a mom, it seems like everyone has an opinion. And it can be helpful sometimes, but I also feel like it can add it adds so much like self-doubt, confusion, mom guilt. So that's what we're exploring today. Hav, do you want to jump in? I know you definitely have some personal experiences with just
Yeah.
any of this.
And so much of it was, I hate unsolicited advice. I honestly don't like advice. I'm learning that about myself. Like, I will literally hold back from telling people stuff that I'm going through because I just know that I just don't want to hear. Like, whatever. Is that a personal problem? Absolutely. It absolutely is. But I think the hardest part, I'll just say this, for me is like a lot of it is done with love by the people that are like closest to you. I think it's never like meant to shame you. Well, I won't say never because some people are just shitty. But I know all of my unsolicited advice was done with love. But it was with Azzy, I'll go with her because like first pregnancy, I told everybody, I was like 6 weeks. I told everybody right away. If you've listened to our episodes, you've heard me talk about going through grieving, just like being my own self. So that toppled with people just constantly being like, your life is never going to be the same. I'm like, yeah, I know. And like, I feel like a lot of people's advice, honestly, wasn't necessarily helpful. It was just like a reminder that there's so much that like you can do wrong between feeding and sleeping and like taking care of yourself even and I feel like a lot of it was always contradictory, right? Like you need to do this and you need to do that and da 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 da, and then you're finally doing all these things and you're burnt out, and then they're like, well, what are you doing for yourself? And I'm like, well, you just told me that literally nothing about this is about myself anymore, so what do you mean doing about it? Just like stuff like that. Or even doctors, like certain time, like I've been told like, oh, like you need to take more time for yourself, and I'm like, you think I don't want to? Like, I don't know, I just feel like, and this isn't the case for all parents. I will be the first to say that I genuinely just don't think some people should have kids.
I agree.
It's just like, but like in general, if you are having a kid, you are an unselfish person because you are giving up so much for them and not being given the space to kind of figure out what you want for yourself. I think that was like a lot for me, for Azzy being a newborn. There was just so much that like I thought that I was supposed to be doing. And now looking back on it, and even thinking about the people that gave certain advice, I'm like, that's not actually like what you intended. But when you're so deep in it and you're trying to do everything to be good for your kid and like you don't know what it is to be a parent. I helped raise my niece. That literally did not help me at all. Like I was calling my sister like, was I there for this? And she's like, no, like, yeah, you were there, but like, of course you're not, like, you were auntie, like, no matter how much you kid. But I think, yeah, that was like, or like my friends, I don't think you did it very much, but I did have a lot of my friends sending me like constantly sending me baby TikTok videos or like swaddles to try or like, and the very loving, like, but it's also hard to be like, okay, like, why are you giving me this advice? One, you guys don't know anything. And two, like, yeah, I know I'm researching all this. Like, can you just send me a funny TikTok video? Like, just send me So that was like kind of hard for me to get a hold of. I don't get very much unsolicited advice with this kid. I think most of the people that know about it and just know me so well that they're like, you're gonna do, like, once I got out of that, like, I have to do what people are telling me phase, they realize like Hobbs gonna do what Hobbs gonna do, and it's clearly working, so we're just gonna step back. So that's been a lot easier. I've also like didn't tell people I was pregnant until kind of recently and stuff, but yeah, I'm like, I could go on for days, but the I think what kills me now is the stranger unsolicited advice. Like, nothing makes me want to punch somebody more than you thinking that you know anything about like what's going on. And I live in the South, and I think Aleea, you probably have a very similar, like, in the community you live in, like you're at a grocery store. And again, Aleea, you have a very big kid. I had a very big, like your baby's big. My baby was big. People think they're way older than they are. And nothing irks me more than being told to put my child down. Or
Mm-hmm.
like, just like the, like the older grandparents or whatever who are like, put them down. They don't need to be held. Look how big that baby, or like, look how big. That's a grown adult. And I'm like, there are children that don't know how to talk at her age. So yeah, those are the ones that irk me the most because I'm you literally, and we've talked about this in the last season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't know what's going on at home. You don't know why I'm holding her walking through the store. You don't, like, you literally have no idea. So why do you think it's your time to like speak up?
Mm-hmm. I'm really glad you brought up a lot of those points because especially in the early days, you just feel so bombarded. And then, like, take out the stranger interaction first, like what you were saying earlier. It's like if people are sending you all this stuff, and like we've talked about, of course, it can seem like they mean well, but you just feel so bombarded. But like coming back to like strangers, what I find so interesting is it seems like it's always out of love from family and friends, and sometimes it's just taken out of context or it's a generational difference. But a lot of times with strangers, to me, it comes off as like jealous or backhanded. Like it's like most of the comment, it's like you're just making a comment because it almost seems like you want me to feel bad, because it's like you could have just said something nice, like, oh, your kid's really cute. And then like talk to your like person next to you and been like, look at that big kid. Can you believe she's holding like, I would rather that than you, like, tell me the opinion. Like, I
Or
just
like,
find
how
that
are you that you have a mom that still carries you? Like,
yeah,
one, you didn't need a comment anyway,
no,
but I
but to
have
me, it's
had
like
that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
yeah,
She's so lucky.
yeah, because I just find it interesting. To me, it feels like they're going out of their way to say something negative, but it's something to me, it's just one of those moments that I always remind myself, if I wouldn't take their advice or if I wouldn't take their criticism, I'm not gonna take their advice.
Yeah.
So, to me, that applies. But yeah, I agree with you. Not I don't love advice, but I like it when it feels supportive and not corrective.
Yeah.
Not that sometimes corrective is needed, but like for me, like you would give me advice, but it felt like more of a suggestion or like, hey, here's some ideas. It wasn't like hey, you're doing it wrong kind of, like it just felt more supportive to my situation. And so I think that is something that like, even though it can be hard to come off, like, even though you're well-meaning, like, for me, yeah, it's not about, like, it's about guiding each other.
Totally. And I think too, part of it for me is a big culture difference. I think for giving advice for you, well, one, I knew that I hated the
Mhm,
unsolicited stuff. So I think I tried mostly to be like, if you need advice, let me know. I'll tell you
mhm,
my thoughts. But like otherwise, complain to me like,
mhm,
here, girl.
mhm,
But for me, it was a really big cultural difference. We moved across the country. I'm a city girl. Like my mom had me at home. This doesn't correlate with being a city girl, but my mom had me at home. I didn't go to preschool. She didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom. She was very, very focused on her children. And I'm not saying that the people that I live next to are not focused on their children, but they had to go to work.
right.
They had like a few weeks off, right? So a lot of the advice where I was like, this is honestly detrimental to me
Mhm,
was the advice of like daycare and
mhm,
sleep training and stuff like that, where I was like, this is what I have to do to be a good mom. But that's what I would have had to do if I was literally had no breaks, had no support. Like these women literally had to do it all on their own. Some were teenagers doing it
mhm,
and they had to do what they had to do to survive.
mhm,
And I don't think that's wrong at all. It's just not the situation that I had. And that was once I finally started, like, I kind of found the phrase of, I'm very thankful that I am privileged enough to not have to do that. I'm privileged enough to not have to send her to daycare. I'm privileged enough to not have to sleep train. I have a very good work life balance. I have managers who understand that like life is important. And if I need to take a nap in the middle of the day, as long as it's not taking away from like actual work and stuff, like if she's home, she's home. If there's a meeting and she walks in and says something, like it's not the end of the world. But that's not the life that they
right.
had or have. So I think that was a big shift for me too, in realizing that like it is a cultural difference and they're just trying to help me succeed in the best way that they know how,
Mhm.
and then helping them understand that like that's not helping me succeed, I think made a big difference. And it's kind of happening again a little bit with second baby. I will say that like people aren't telling me that like I need to be prepared for this for sleep and this, but like I will still pick up Azzy and I will carry her from the car to her daycare class. I will like, there are things that if I decide that I'm capable of doing, do not tell her to get down. And
Right.
I have people who are like, you can't pick her up. Mommy can't pick you up. I'm like, let me tell her that
Mhm.
because she knows if I pick her up, she has to sit at a certain point. She has to hold me a certain way. Like, and we're a family that communicates, and there are a lot of families that like their toddlers just don't communicate that way. But like that's where I'm like with this babe, I'm like, don't speak to her also.
Mhm.
Like you do not tell her what to do. That is my job. If I don't want to pick her up, I won't pick her up. I carried her like up the stairs somewhere and they're like, you need to stop doing that. Like you're not gonna be able to do that soon. I was like, that was me. She didn't ask to be picked up and be carried. I was being impatient. I picked her up and I carried her. Don't tell me what I can and can't do.
Mhm.
Like so stuff like that is where I'm like, mind
That
yours.
also irritates me. I'm like, I think and to me, that doesn't come off as advice anymore. It's like you're trying to control the situation because 'cause you're, like, walking over like, you have like, we've talked about before, you're just coming into a situation and, like, telling this adult, like, basically what to do, and it's super weird. Because, like, yeah, it's just weird to me, like, they don't know who told who what, and so to just, like, come in and be like, "Hey, don't do that," and it's like, "Thank you, but do not speak for me." Like, I don't like that either, like, we're grown. And I do think that does play into the cultural and generational differences. Cause I definitely, that's like for me, a lot of the advice. And again, I think that is kind of the areas we're in. We're in a little more rural, traditional, conservative areas. And obviously, most of it's well meaning. But to me, it's just a lot of it's outdated information and just generationally different. And I think I've given this example before with baby led weaning, but like with my mom and I, we were really at odds with it just because she was so scared about it until I sent her research explaining that it's not like the choking doesn't get, the choking risks isn't higher and things like that. But I'm like, it wasn't that she was against it, she just didn't understand. And so it's like once you explained it, it was like, okay, this isn't as bad. And so it's just one of those reminders that like a lot of times things that come off as just fears that might seem dismissive to your abilities, but I'm like, it's not, that's not exactly what they're trying to do.
I'm so glad you brought up baby led weaning because I think that is a huge one and it was for our family too. But once I mean for me, I also just took that off the plate. Like if you and I'm not I
Oh, yeah.
think they're the same thing, but like if you are gonna have her for a meal, you can do purees or you can
Mhm,
do but once I realized that it was the fear, because like I
mhm.
had the will feed her broccoli and he like was like, what are we doing? But don't get me started on the rice in the baby bottle
Oh,
before
yeah.
able to
Yeah.
eat. We're
Cereal.
you're afraid of that. You're not afraid of that choking. But anyways, again, culture like it's just how people are raised. But I will say a positive to having a different culture and to sharing that information and being the one to kind of like break that generation. I would say that's generational trauma and just like
Mhm.
fear, is watching them. Like I remember when her grandparents saw me give her
Mhm.
steak and they were like, she's gonna like, there's no way. I'm like, well, let me add, she doesn't chew on it. She's not eating the steak. She's sucking the nutrients out of it. And that's like their favorite thing to this day to be like, yeah, our baby was eating a New York strip steak at 6 months old. Like she has a pellet of like whatever. And I'm like, yeah. So like those are things that like were fun for them too. Scary. I'm not saying baby led weaning wasn't scary for me, but
Oh,
the
yeah.
research helps in like seeing it. And yeah, for sure.
I think yeah, and I think that's a good example. It's like sometimes you just have to take their fears that are that come off as concerned advice and
Yeah.
just explain and flip it. And so that kind of leads us into like, what do you have any other, tips or tricks for kind of like handling unsolicited advice or judgment or just like any of this? Because obviously it
Yeah.
can be an array of things.
I think I'm just gonna call out this influencer. I think we've mentioned her before, but Carrie Locker, as we love, she
Mhm,
she preaches a lot about how much of this like stress are we putting on ourselves for fear of like judgment from others.
mhm,
And once we start letting that go, how much more fun parenting can be and less stressful it can be. She talks a lot about like public settings and like going to the grocery store and like stuff like that. But I think that that mindset is something that I'm working on, but I think it is really important of just being like, is your advice that you're giving me upsetting me because it's something that I think that I need to work on? Or is it upsetting me because I think that you're judging me? And I would argue that if it's the latter, then we have to do our best to just like let it bounce off. And I think that was a lot of stuff for me is like I just felt like I was being judged. And then, those same people would be like on the phone or talking to somebody and they'd be asking how I was doing and they'd be like, "Oh, she's such a good mom." And like that makes you realize like you weren't actually judging me, like I thought you were, and that was kind of more in my head. And so sometimes just like, yeah, just being like, what do I want for my family? What do I want for my kids? The public thing that was hard for me when as he was younger and stuff. But then you also realize like you I think a lot of times we put our thoughts onto others. I was literally at Goodwill with her yesterday and the toys are out and all this stuff, right? And she's playing with this Paw Patrol command tower thing and she wants it really bad. And essentially we don't have room for it. We don't have the toys for it. So I was saying no. And she was just like negotiating with me. I think she threw like I won't even say she threw a tantrum. She kind of threw herself on the ground a little bit and was like, "But I want it." And I got down on her level and we had the conversation or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're right by the cashier. I'm sitting here thinking, "Oh my gosh, this guy thinks I don't have control of my child. Like he must think that she's so like ill behaved, like all these things, she gets what she wants, da da da," right? Like, and then I go up, I can't even remember what I said, but he was like, "Oh, I was just gonna say how well mannered she is." Like that was really impressive. And I was like, "We're working on it," like still deflecting, be like, "Yeah, we're working on it," like da 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 da. It's age appropriate for her, but and he was like, "No, I think that like she's learning social norms and like all this stuff." And I was like, "That is not what I thought you were thinking." But that's my own problem.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up because I know, especially new parents, I know it's something that I have thought about a lot, especially going back to where I'm from. It's like a lot of people pleaser, like worried about what judgments, things like that come up. I'm like, we think people care so much more than they are when you're out in public. Like, I'm like, oh, Dash is crying. People are paying attention. I personally can tell you, until I had kids, I honestly didn't know other kids in the store. Like, to be honest, like, even when they were crying, it kind of just went over my head. Like, yeah, it might annoy someone for like a second, but I'm like, most people are so focused on themselves that they're not even like focused. So it's just kind of funny because I think that's a prime example of like, we think like, oh, they're making this thing. And that guy looked at you and goes, oh, what a good mom dealing with that. And probably went on just doing whatever he was doing, like had no second thought about it. But in our head, we're like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible.
Yeah. He was like, "Oh, she's so." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh, okay, it's not so bad. And so I always tell myself that, like, when I'm getting really uncomfortable in public, is I'm like, Aleea, no one is looking at you. And I'm like, and even if they are, like, the thing is, and we've talked about this before too, people are going to judge no matter what. So I'm like, even if you're doing something good or even if you're doing something bad, they're judging it. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, just try to do your best to, live as much as you can without being too focused. But another tip I do want to add that kind of adds into this is deciding who gets access to your opinions and things like not everyone needs explanations, not everyone needs updates, not everyone needs like your emotional labor or explaining everything. Like if you decide to do something as a parent, not everyone has to know. Like, obviously, I use the example of like explaining it to my mom. She's my grandma. She helps me a ton. She's like part of my village. I want her to understand why I want to do something. I'm not going to do that same thing for everybody. So I think that is something to remember that like you don't have to explain all your choices, but I think it is important to remember like who you keep, in your circle because I mean, knowledge is still power.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, and I'm glad you brought that up, is there are certain people I'll explain things to, but I also think that it is totally your right to not explain things. And that even goes with people in public, like, what do you have the energy for today? Like, sometimes I just laugh it off and I'm like, "Ha ha ha," and I'll literally just whisper to Azzy and be like, "You stay right here, like, you're good."
Mhm.
Or sometimes, I have a little more energy and I'll explain to them, like, I love to educate a person, you know? Like, "Hey, she's not 6, she's 3. very, very age appropriate.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's really, really important. And then I will also say is like on the fact that a lot of the people that are close to you, like for us, grandparents, our friends, stuff like that, especially people who are giving you advice that doesn't work for you, it's usually coming out of like care. And I know
Mhm.
there was a big shift for me when I was like, like that actually doesn't work for me. Like I know you see that I'm exhausted and you want me to put her down so that I have time to go rest, but I'm like telling you that I will not sleep knowing that she's upset like
Right.
this. So it doesn't work for me. And just keeping it as simple as that. Like, hey,
Mhm.
think.
Yeah, I'm the same way because it's like what we've been saying this whole time. Just because something works for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And sometimes they're just not going to get it. And it is what it is. But I think it's just a reminder that the hardest part of motherhood isn't always the parenting. It's like the commentary and the opinions and all the things that come with it. So before we kind of wrap up, Hav, do you have any final tips or opinions, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think, as we always say, you know your family and your child best, but seriously, try to remember a lot of this unsolicited advice is people caring for you. And if you don't tell them that you don't want it or you don't need it, they're going to keep doing it. So I think learning to express yourself and like speak up a little bit
Mhm.
sometimes is good. We're learning how to do it. And then, yeah, just remembering everybody like has a different life than you. I mean, I literally have friends who have young children right now who tried to do things the way that I did it and they hated it.
Mhm.
And that's okay too, as long as you support each other and like just loving each other and letting each other vent. But yeah, you don't own anybody your time. You don't own anybody your explanations. I will say, unless they're a caregiver, then you kind of have to.
I mean, it just helps. Like, you don't want to be fighting back and forth. Like, sometimes it's, yeah.
Well, it's like there's always that like you either let them do what they want
Yep.
or you take the kid away from them if they're your boundaries. But yeah,
Yeah.
set boundaries for
Yeah.
yourself.
And I like the idea of like, or what you were saying, like it just helps. Like sometimes you have to compromise a little. But like Hoff said, we all live different lives in different circumstances. So honor what works for you and your family because I mean, even Hav and I, we live similarly, but yet still so differently. So we're pretty close to the same in like how we work and like where we live and things like that. And even how we approach life is still different. So
Try not to compare yourself even to your best friend.
exactly, because it's going to be different. So, with that said, stay tuned for next week because this is exciting. This is another guest of ours that well, we haven't had another guest yet. So this is our second guest and we're going to be sitting down with one of my high school best friends, Hannah, for a conversation about her pregnancy journeys. She's had a different journey than both of us for both her pregnancies as they were a lot more difficult. So, she's really fun and yeah, so you don't want to miss it. So make sure to stay tuned and we will see you then. Bye.
Bye.